last 24 hours. The United States attacked four bridges in Iran and railways, and the attack is getting deeper inside the Iranian territory somehow. But all these attacks that I've just mentioned are in the southern part of Iran and the western part. And the Iranian attack was basically on all of GCC countries except Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia didn't get any sort of attack so far, or it wasn't mentioned in the news. And the one of the targets last night was the Bahrain Petroleum Company, BAPCO as they call it, was hit with one of these missiles. When the war started, Ambassador, to the United States and Israel together attacking. Then you see right now the current phase of the war is the United States using GCC countries attacking Iran, and Iranian response is to GCC countries. Israel is not part of that. Lebanon is not part of that. The situation is somehow, you know, they try to stabilize the situation. We had a new attack in Yemen, Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen, and many people were questioning what was that? What was the main reason for Saudi Arabia to go that far? But focusing on, I'm gonna ask other questions, but focusing on the current situation with the war, do you think that the path of talks and diplomacy, those things are gone, or there's still there is some sort of chance to have some sort of sanity with what's going on between the two sides?
Oh, I think diplomacy is dead in this context. It was strangled at birth by misunderstandings, by the failure of the envoys on the U.S. side to act professionally, to try to clarify those terms that were not clear. And so we've had a complete collapse of the so-called Memorandum of Understanding. I think it's important to note, by the way, that the Memorandum of Understanding concept is one in which an agreement is only tentative. In this case, a tentative agreement to a framework for negotiations. This is about as remote from a real understanding as you can get. And in the American usage, a memorandum of understanding has no legal force. It is not a legal document. It is, at best, a moral commitment. But in the Iran-U.S. context, of course, this is diplomacy. And in diplomacy, your word must be your bond. So you must, if you make a promise, whether it's legally enforceable or not, you have an ethical responsibility to carry it out. In this case, the United States attempted basically to revise all of the terms of the MOU in practice, and while charging Iran, when it responded to this by charging Iran with violations of the MOU. What we're seeing now is an escalatory cycle. Iran will definitely escalate in response to the extension of American bombing to civilian infrastructure. At the moment, as you indicated, Iran is counterattacking bases, U.S. bases, and some installations. You mentioned BAPCO, the Bahrain oil company, in the region in response to, as reprisal for the American attacks. As you note, it has apparently not attacked Saudi Arabia. And there are two reasons for this. One is that the Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen, have been provoked by Saudi Arabia into attacks on the Saudis, beginning with an attack on the airport at Abha, a mountain area which was part of Yemen until the 1930s, when it was conquered by Saudi Arabia. A very distinctive, colorful area. This was not followed by a Saudi reprisal. So it seems that the Saudis must have recognized that the attack on the Sana'a airport that they conducted was a mistake. Basically, they had 4 years of ceasefire, truce with Yemen, they broke that. And now the Ansar Allah, the Houthis who control Sana'a and much of Yemen in the north, have been asked by Iran to blockade the Red Sea again. And in a way, what we're seeing, Nima, I think in terms of the American involvement in this, is a parallel, a reenactment of the earlier American effort against Ansar Allah, the Houthis, which went on for almost a year, cost $1 billion+, achieved absolutely nothing. And in the end, the American fleet sailed away and declared victory without achieving it, and washed its hands of the whole affair. And I think that is probably where this U.S.-Iranian war is going to end, because I don't see any way in which either side can dislodge the other. Iran can't get rid of the American Navy, and the bases in the bases in Jordan, the tankers stashed in Israel, and so on. Iran has limitations. The United States can't just dislodge Iran from the Strait of Hormuz, because half of the Strait of Hormuz is on the Iranian side of the sea. So nobody can win militarily. That's been obvious from the beginning. Diplomacy has failed. This leaves Donald Trump, who last night, in a remarkably incoherent speech, really travesty, an explosion of nonsense that I think will do him more harm than good, as with the American public. The only mention he made of Iran was, quote, "We are winning big with Iran," which is, of course, complete nonsense. So both sides are stuck. This is going toward greater violence. The more the United States extends bombing to civilian infrastructure in Iran, the more Iran will strike civilian infrastructure in the countries where U.S. bases exist and from which the United States is attacking Iran. A final thought. I suppose one reason that Saudi Arabia may not have been attacked is that the Saudis continue to deny the use of bases on their territory to the United States. After all, the deputy foreign minister did go to Tehran to attend the funeral ceremonies for the late Ali Khamenei, which was a gesture of goodwill. And one has to assume that there is some sort of understanding between Saudi Arabia and Iran about how to limit the conflict between them. But clearly, the other Gulf Arabs have not reached such an accommodation with Iran and continue to allow the use of facilities on their territory to the United States in attacks on Iran. So this is a very dangerous situation. And I have to say, it also is politically, potentially very damaging to both the United States, Israel, and other countries, because basically the United States has reverted to enforcing the Iranian blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Oil is not coming out, gas is not coming out, ships are not getting in. We've now had an instance where the United States, not Iran, attacked a tanker. In this case, a tanker with a Curacao registration, which was going to Kharg Island presumably to load up on Iranian oil. And so basically there has now been a total cutoff of oil and gas exports from the Persian Gulf because the Houthis are now blockading the Red Sea, apparently. And the clock is ticking. The world is very short of key forms of fossil fuel. In the case of the United States, we are probably a week or two away from running out of sour crude from which to make jet fuel and diesel fuel, which are the backbone of our transportation system. And Donald Trump is approaching the midterm elections. I think last night's incoherent speech by Donald Trump was, in fact, an act of desperation on his part. He or his advisors understand that if he cannot stop the elections or pervert them, the November elections, he's toast. He will lose power, and in many ways, he's already lost power because the Congress, for the first time, is defying him. We've seen now votes to cut off aid to Israel that are unprecedented. They didn't succeed, but they were notable. And we have seen defiance of the president on his effort to federalize the election system. So this is he's under tremendous pressure, and he's not going to get anywhere by escalating against Iran.
There were some reports last night that Iran targeted the bridge between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. That bridge is so important because it connects Saudi Arabia. So far, I haven't seen any footage or photo coming out showing that that bridge was hit. But it was mentioned last night. Multiple outlets reported on that Iran targeted that. But mostly, when I look at the Iranian targets, they're basically targeting the bases, the radars, HIMARS,
Right.
and all these weapons, even the fighter jets, shelters that they have, the fighters, the refueling tankers. They're mostly focused on the military equipment.
Yes, including high altitude persistent drones, which where apparently they've destroyed over 50 such drones in the course of this war. So this brings up the key question that Iran is firing episodically. I don't think it's significantly depleting its magazine depth, its trove of weaponry. But the United States is in a very precarious position because the weapon systems that it is deploying require not months, but years to be replaced. And so this is weakening the American position globally. The U.S. can keep it up in the Persian Gulf, but it comes at a strategic cost. So at some point, this is why I cite the example of the campaign against the Houthis, which basically had to end because it was costing too much. It was wear and tear on ships and personnel, and weaponry expended were accomplishing nothing. And I suspect we're going to see the same denouement, unfolding of a result here, but it will take a while.
Yeah. The reason that the war somehow they decided to announce the ceasefire, in my opinion, was the way Iran was attacking Israel and hitting. You remember in the last days of the 40 days of war, they attacked Dimona. They hit some targets in Dimona. Then they announced the ceasefire to put an end to those attacks. But when it comes to the GCC countries, how important? How do you see what is the point for these countries to say this is enough? We're getting to or as I said, one of the oil facilities was hit in Bahrain. We're going to see more and more. And when it goes to Qatar, it goes to other countries, Kuwait and Bahrain, maybe UAE, Jordan, all of them together. It's not about the country, it's about the oil market. It's about how these attacks going to influence the whole situation with the global market, and that Donald Trump is concerned of.
Well, you're asking the key question. What is the war termination mechanism here? Clearly, there's only one answer, and that is perhaps Saudi Arabia has come up with it, if it is indeed exempt from Iranian attack, which I'm not sure it is. There may still, I think there are probably still American forces at Al Kharj Air Base, Prince Sultan Air Base, south of Riyadh, and perhaps elsewhere. But the answer is get rid of the American bases, because they are the target and they are the justification for the assaults. And it's very interesting in this regard to hear American military figures, retired generals who commanded the Central Command, talking about moving all the bases to Israel, basically admitting that these bases are no longer defensible or usable, and they have a limited half-life. They will have to be vacated. But this is a big decision. Nobody in the Gulf wants to give up their connection to the United States. It's important to them. Their weaponry is American for the most part. They know that the United States is the only country that can project power to the region in case of emergency, as was demonstrated in the Gulf War of 1990 to 91, most definitively. So they don't want to break their ties with the United States. And the Trump administration is particularly difficult to deal with in this context because it has no coherent strategy. Its sensitivities are great. It is quite capable of having a temper tantrum, and has done so on numerous other contexts. How do you remove the bases without losing your connection to the United States? And how do you do this without a degree of political humiliation? Because, this basically is saying, okay, we accept that we have no alternative but to make peace and get along with Iran, much as we may dislike Iran. So one has to sympathize with the Gulf Arab governments. They face difficult choices. Easy.